What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Sports Degenerate Podcast. Today is Friday, September 6th. We got some Friday night football tonight. Eagles versus Packers in Brazil. We will go over some fantasy football talk, some bets for tonight's game, just like we did yesterday. We are also going to recap last night's game, Chiefs versus Ravens. Let's hop into it. I think last night was a perfect start to this NFL season. I don't think we could ask for anything more. It was a close game, an entertaining game. We saw two of the league's elite quarterbacks go head-to-head, and it came down to the wire. It was a perfect game to start the season. Let's get into how we did last night. Let's start off with the bets. So we went 3 for 5 on bets. So if you tailed all 5 bets, we still profited going 3 for 5. The bets we missed the spread. We had the Ravens plus 3.5. The Ravens lost by a touchdown. We really needed that likely touchdown at the end of the game to count, to hit. But, it is what it is. I still like the call. It was a close game like I expected it to be. And then we missed on Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews did not have a good game. He really ruined us. We will talk about Mark Andrews in a little bit because I know a lot of people are worried about him. We'll talk about him in a little bit. But we hit 3 bets, like I said. We hit the Patrick Mahomes over passing yards. We hit the Derrick Henry anytime touchdown. And we hit the Rashee Rice over receptions. So 3 for 5. Good night. Let's get into the fantasy aspect of the game now. So before last night's game, I told you guys to start all of your studs, both quarterbacks, Lamar, Mahomes, both tight ends, Kelce, Andrews, and both running backs, Henry and Pacheco. Basically, everyone came through but Andrews, Kelce, and Mahomes. Lamar had a great game. He had to do all of the work. He was running for his life. The Chiefs' pass rush was all over him. He had to do all the work. He was amazing. Mahomes didn't have the best fantasy game, but he played great in real life football. What it came down to was there were only 1 passing touchdown and 2 rushing touchdowns. So that's why Mahomes didn't have a good fantasy game, but he played great. You're not hesitating to start him. Both of the tight ends didn't have a great game. Let's start off with Kelce. I was worried about this exact thing during draft season with Kelce. If you have followed me for a couple months or for a year, however long, I told you guys not to draft Travis Kelce as the number 1 tight end this year for this exact reason. I don't think he's going to be the target leader this year. I think it's going to be Rashee Rice, and it showed last night. Kelce's still going to have great games. You're still starting him. I just think you have to temper expectations. And then Mark Andrews, probably the biggest red flag from the game last night for everybody. Only had 2 catches. The other tight end, Isaiah Likely, outperformed him. I'm not panicking yet. If this continues for a couple more weeks, I'll panic, but I'm not panicking yet. There's a couple reasons why. 1, I don't think Mark Andrews was fully conditioned for this game. He did look slow with the ball in his hands. He did look slow running his routes. I think it's because during the offseason he got in a car accident, so I don't think he's fully conditioned. I think that improves. The second reason, just watching the broadcast view, the same view that you guys saw, Andrews was open. He was running his routes in the middle of the field like he always does, and usually Lamar hits him on those routes. But like I said, Lamar was running for his life. The Chiefs' pass rush was all over him. He didn't have time to throw those downfield routes. That's why we saw a lot of dump-offs to Flowers, Justice Hill, Isaiah Likely. So I'm not panicked yet. When the All-22 coaches film becomes available for me to watch, I will watch it and kind of really look at Mark Andrews and see what I saw on the broadcast view matches up. But right now, I'm not panicking yet on Mark Andrews. And then both running backs had solid games. They both got you a touchdown. Those guys are basically the same. When the Chiefs are leading and the Ravens are leading, those guys are going to get a lot of work. When they're not leading, I think last night was a floor for you guys. 13, 14 points, I think, is a solid floor for both of these running backs. You're starting them every single week. Let's get into the 3 guys we had questions about going into last night's game. Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, and Zay Flowers. These are guys that you didn't draft as starters, and maybe you started. The advice I gave you on all three of these guys. I told you to absolutely lock Rashee Rice into your lineup. I hope you did. 7 catches, 100 yards last night. I told you guys, he is my bold call for this year. One of my biggest bold calls. I think he's going to be a top 12 fantasy receiver. He's going to lead the Chiefs in targets, and it showed last night. Start him every single week until he proves otherwise. Next, Zay Flowers. Like I said before last night's game, he is a wide receiver 3 for me until he proves otherwise. I'm fine starting him, but I don't love it. It's because of what we saw last night. It was the same thing we saw last year when Andrews was on the field. All he gets is these little dump-offs. He had 6 catches, but for less than 50 yards. Like, he'll give you a solid baseline of around 10 PPR points, but until he proves he can do more than that, he's just a wide receiver 3 in my eyes. And lastly, Xavier Worthy. I was wrong on this one. I told you guys not to start him, and he had over 20 points, 2 touchdowns. Do I think this is going to be consistent? No, I just don't think he's going to get the volume every single week. Like, he only had like 3 touches last night, but 2 of them turned into touchdowns. So I think you have to start him because he's proven the explosiveness. Like, he can make huge plays. So you have to start him, but I don't think you should expect consistency. But that's going to be the recap for last night's game. I hope you guys tailed the Rashee Rice call, and I hope you guys tailed all of our bets. Let's get into Packers versus Eagles Friday Night Football. Let's get it. So let's start off with the fantasy part of tonight's game, Eagles-Packers. I'm going to tell you guys the same thing for every single game. Start your studs. So if you have Barkley, Jacobs, both running backs, if you have Jalen Hurts, or if you have A.J. Brown, you're starting those guys. You probably drafted all those guys within the first 4 rounds of your draft. You're not hesitating. Me personally, I have Barkley in 1 league. I have Jacobs in tons of leagues. And then I have A.J. Brown in 2 leagues. So I have a lot invested in this game. I hope you guys listen to me. Another bold call I made during draft season was that Josh Jacobs is going to be a top 5 running back this year. I think he's going way too late. I think he is going to go crazy this year. Just a little tidbit. I called it during draft season. But you're starting all these guys. Don't hesitate starting all of these studs. Both running backs, Hurts, A.J. Brown. But there are a lot of other guys that you probably drafted in this game. We'll start off with Jordan Love. Most of you guys probably drafted him as your starter. But if you didn't, I like Love this week as a top 10 quarterback. The Eagles defense just is really freaking injured. We'll get into that later when we talk about bets. But Jordan Love, I like him this week, and I like him this year in general. I think he also has a breakout year. Start him if you have him. Devontae Smith is a solid starter. I personally would have started Rashee Rice over him last night. So if you had that decision, I hope you went Rashee Rice over him. But if not, Devontae Smith is going to be a solid starter every week. He can give you 20 points in one week, 25 points. But I think he gives you a solid floor of around 12 PPR points no matter what. And then it comes to the Packers receivers. So most people probably drafted Christian Watson, Jordan Reed, and then maybe Romeo Doubs. We'll start off with Doubs because he probably is really drafted really late or maybe not even drafted. If you're in a deep league, I like Doubs. I think he's going to be consistently 5 catches or so a game, around that. So maybe 10 PPR points without a touchdown. But he's a solid player, man. He has good hands. He runs decent routes. Solid player. I don't mind starting him as a flex or wide receiver 3 in a deep league. Jordan Reed and Christian Watson. I like both of these guys a lot. I think Reed is more of like the gadgety guy, more of like the Deebo Samuel guy. So he probably is going to get maybe more touches than Christian Watson. So I like Reed as a wide receiver 3 or a flex as a solid starter. Christian Watson I like a lot this year. I really do like a lot this year. His main problem in his career is injuries, right? He just can't stay healthy. But when this dude is healthy, this dude is a beast, bro. This dude is an absolute beast. He's fast, big, strong, good hands. He kind of reminds me of a Mike Evans type of receiver. That's who he reminds me of. So if you have him, I would start him as a top 24 receiver. I really think he's going to have a good night tonight and a good season this season. But against this beat-up Eagles defense, week 1 of the season, I think LaFleur is going to try to get Christian Watson the ball. I like Christian Watson a lot as a top 24 receiver. If you have lineup decisions, please comment in the comments, message me on social media. I'll give you my advice on who to start Christian Watson over. There's tons of receivers, so like it's hard for me to kind of give you a range. But like I said, I would start him as a top 24 receiver all day long. I like him a lot. So that's the fantasy implications for this game. Start all your studs. I like Jordan Love as a starter. I like Devontae Smith as a solid wide receiver 2. I like Christian Watson as a wide receiver 2 as well. Jordan Reed's a good flex or wide receiver 3. And then Doubs, if you're in a deep league, I don't mind him. But yeah, guys, let's get into the bets. So we have more bets tonight than we did for last night's game, Ravens-Chiefs. I think this game is going to be a bonanza, super high scoring. There is a lot of offensive talent in this game. So all of these lines we're going to start with, you can get on any sportsbook you used. They should be around this price, around the same lines. Let's start off with the spread. So the Eagles are favored in this game. So I took the Packers plus 3.5. Minus 160 is the odds. So when I bet this, it was originally at Packers plus 2.5. So I bought a full point to give us a little bit of wiggle room. So the Packers can lose by a field goal and we still hit. Just like the same bet we did for the Ravens last night. Here's why I like this bet. Like I said, both of these teams have a lot of offensive talent. I think they're pretty evenly matched, so I don't think the Eagles should be favored by lots. But points in the Packers' favor here. The Eagles' defense is really injured. Here are the injuries on the Eagles' defense. One of their starting linebackers, Devin White, is not playing. One of their starting cornerbacks, Isaiah Rodgers, is not playing. And one of their starting safeties, James Bradberry, is on IR. So Eagles' defense is just beat up. So yes, the Eagles have a lot of offensive talent, just like the Packers. But the Eagles' defense is super beat up. And the Packers are fully healthy. So that alone, I just think the teams are more evenly matched than people think. And also, if this is a shootout, let's say both offenses go crazy. Both offenses are scoring a lot of points. I like the Packers there. The Eagles and Jalen Hurts, the way they like to win games, they like to play a slow offense. They like to slow the tempo of the game and win that way. They don't like having shootouts. I trust Jordan Love way more in a shootout than I trust Jalen Hurts. I think Jalen Hurts makes more mistakes when he's forced to pass than Jordan Love does. So those are the reasons why I like the Packers plus 3.5. So we got one more bet for this game before we get into the player props. We got the total of this game over 48 points at minus 140. So this line was actually originally at 49.5. So we had to get 50 points to win. I bought 1.5 points to bring it down to 48. The reason I do that is because the people that make these lines, they know what they're doing. Usually if you don't buy points, you get caught by the hook. If we would have taken 49.5, I bet it would have been at 49 and we lose. So I just like buying points. It gives you a little bit of wiggle room, and it really doesn't affect how much money you make. It's going to be a couple dollars here and there. So, like guys, I don't really have to explain why I like this. Like I said, I think this is going to be a shootout. That's why I like the over in this game. So, game total over 48 points. Let's get into the player props now. So let's start with Christian Watson, man. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I said I like Christian Watson as a top 24 receiver this week. And so I'm going to take over his receiving yards. We're going to go Christian Watson over 38.5 yards at minus 120 odds. So he's an explosive player. He's a good player. He's not a bad player. The only thing that affects him, like we talked about earlier, is injuries. He can get 38 yards in one play. He can either catch a deep pass or he can take a crosser to the house. I just think this line is too low for him if he's playing full snaps, which we think he is. And he's Jordan Love loves throwing to this guy. Last year, when he played, he led the team in red zone targets when he played. So Jordan Love loves throwing him the ball. We can get this in one play. Lock it in. Christian Watson over 38.5 yards. Next, we got Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown score plus 100. So we are getting plus money for Jalen Hurts to have a rushing touchdown. Think about that. What is Jalen Hurts known for? The tush push, man. Getting that goal line touchdown. Getting the red zone touchdowns. I know everyone's worried about Saquon getting the rushing touchdowns. If they get to the goal line, they're doing the tush push. It's not that I super love this bet. Like, I'm not guaranteeing he's going to score. But the fact that we can get plus money for Jalen Hurts to score a rushing touchdown, it's too good to pass up. Jalen Hurts, anytime touchdown score, lock it in. Next, we got Jordan Love over 256 passing yards at minus 115. So we talked about it earlier. The Eagles' defense is really injured going into this game. Not only that, even with a healthy defense last year, the Eagles were the third worst team against quarterbacks. They allowed over 255 yards per game to quarterbacks. And let's talk about Jordan Love. I like him as a talent. We all know that he is a good talent. His last 8 starts of last season. So once he got into the groove of playing in the NFL, his last 8 starts, he averaged over 268 yards per game. So just the matchup alone, with Jordan Love as the talent, I like this bet. Lock it in. Jordan Love over 256 passing yards. So next we got Josh Jacobs over 64.5 rushing yards at minus 115. So usually it's not a smart betting strategy to bet the running back over and the quarterback over on the same team. But I think it's just too good to pass up at this line. Like I said, Eagles defense is injured. I don't have to keep saying it. There's one of their starting linebackers is out. That's going to be great for Jacobs. Jacobs last year on a terrible Raiders offense averaged 62 rushing yards per game. So we only need 3 more than that to hit this bet on a better offense. And if it's high scoring, I just think there's going to be a lot of offense, man. I think this is a pretty low line for how hurt the Eagles defense is. And Josh Jacobs is a great talent. Josh Jacobs over 64.5 rushing yards. Lock it in. All right, our last one is Saquon Barkley over 64.5 rushing yards at minus 115. So it's the same exact bet as Josh Jacobs. So there's a couple of reasons why I like this. One, Saquon averaged almost 70 yards per game on the Giants last year, and now he's going to a better quarterback, a better offense. He's going to cook. And Saquon has played 3 games against the Packers in his career. He averages almost 80 yards per game against the Packers. And then one last thing in Saquon's favor. The Packers were the 5th worst team against the run last year. They allowed over 127 rushing yards per game. So it's just the talent versus this team. I like it. Lock it in. Saquon Barkley over 64.5 rushing yards. All right, let's end it off with the Underdog Fantasy Player Parlays. If you guys haven't used Underdog Fantasy, go download the app. You use my code CE2244. I will put it on the screen if you're watching the podcast. A deposit match up to $1,000 if you use my code. So if you put in $1,000, they will give you $1,000 worth of free bets. So they're going to match your deposit no matter what you put in. But let's hop into it. So these are the 4 bets that I like. You can put all 4 of these in a parlay. You can mix and match. Usually when you download the app, you get free bets. Like last night, I had a Travis Kelce over half a yard bet. They usually give you little freebie bets. So do whatever you want with these bets. These are the 4 lines I like. So it's going to be the same lines I talked about earlier, the same players. Just the lines are going to be a little bit different. So we still have the Josh Jacobs over, but on Underdog, it's a little bit less than what we talked about. So it's at 63.5 instead of 64, but I already talked about the reasoning. This one, we got Jordan Love over 257, so it's a little bit more, but anything under 260, I like Jordan Love over. And then we got Christian Watson over 38.5 instead of 37.5 earlier. But honestly, I'm fine with anything under 50, let alone anything under 40. Like, I'm fine with it. And then we got the same line with Barkley over 64.5. I talked about it earlier. Lock it in, guys. Thanks for watching. I will post a video before Sunday's game. I don't know if it's going to be Friday night or Saturday nights, but there is going to be a video previewing the Sunday games and reviewing this Friday night game. Thanks for watching, guys. Follow me on social media, Sports Degenerate. Thanks, guys. Love y'all.